Sadantikam. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnapristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatpradeshattarine Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebho Vaishnavebho Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna devotees, we have just about 20 minutes of the recording left today, so which we would like to complete, and then we will go to our question answer session. So I'm just playing from where we left.
God exists within. There's a methodology for those people and that stage of progress in their spiritual evolution. So to be continued. Any discussion? You want to go to Brahmaloka? No suffering, no disease. Let me see your hand. No cuts on hands. No crying. No getting old. You don't need to worry about that. Never get old. You'll always stay young, right? Yeah. Microphone, please.
Maharaj, you mentioned that in Brahmaloka there are 3 varieties of the people residing. One was those are pious people, and the first 2 categories, they do not have devotion. Whereas the third category of yogi.
No, I didn't say that. They don't have the degree of devotion, because piety alone takes you to Svargaloka. So there's some, to reside in Brahmaloka, there must be some degree of devotion. So if I spoke in such a way that it led you to understand that, then it's my mistake in presentation. But the third category is those that have very clear and very strong devotion, but not yet fully perfected.
So at the end of Lord Brahma's life, all 3 categories will go to spiritual world?
It depends. There are different things that Prabhupada says in different places. In some places he says that not even Lord Brahma always returns to the spiritual world. But the qualification that Brahma has carries those that are associated with him. That's an explanation Prabhupada gives in one place. One must, if it just, again, as I said yesterday, it stands to reason that you cannot enter the spiritual world without having the qualification. So if one goes to Brahmaloka without the qualification, then one has to develop the qualification. And the qualification, explained in this class, is devotion. So one has to further develop one's devotion. And further developing one's devotion depends very much upon association, even in Brahmaloka. What to speak of where we are here, in this Martyaloka. We need a good association, because there's lots of opposition in the atmosphere for developing dedication and full devotion to the Supreme Lord. So, the short answer to your question is there's no guarantee. Generally that's the case, but there's no guarantee that persons will go to the spiritual world. It's different than the description we find in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where persons go to the heavenly planets. Generally they come back down after exhausting their punya account is spent. They have to go back to work. Yeah.
Maharaj, from your yesterday's the discussion about the discussion between Pitayana and Gopakumar,
Yeah.
and it seems that although such a highly evolved beings, they are the beings in those planets, they are highly evolved, highly intelligent. We seem to be understanding these things, hearing from you, but they don't understand it.
Yeah, it's just a question of association. Pipalayana Rishi, he's convinced this is best. And how is that possible? Because he knows that there are planets beyond where he is. And there's the spiritual world. But that's why Prabhupada says it was understood to be at a certain rung on the yoga ladder if he is identifying with that rung on the yoga ladder. Just like this description from the 2nd chapter. There may be one who is performing yoga practice, but his understanding is that's not my destination. But some may not have that understanding. And so they're stuck on a certain... So these are great souls, no doubt. The Kumaras descend from the spiritual, from Vaikuntha realm to that Maharloka, to Tapaloka, and give their association to assist those that are in that stage to go to Vaikuntha. And that's discussed in the purport, that the persons who are of such qualification as the residents of the spiritual world, they have freedom to travel wherever they like. They don't need a pass. They don't need to practice, mystic yoga in order to get the mystic capacities. They're endowed with those capacities. And they use them only in a compassionate mission. When Gopakumar goes beyond Brahmaloka to this realm that's beyond the layers of the coverings, just as is described here, is in detail discussed in what those coverings are like in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. He enters into a region that's beyond the coverings, and skipping that, as he's in that realm, he meets Lord Shiva, and then after meeting Lord Shiva, he hears the whole procession of Vaikuntavasis having kirtan as they're heading from the spiritual world into the material world. They're descending into the material world just to give their association on behalf of Vaikunthanath, the Lord of the universe, the Lord of the spiritual realm. So they travel here and there. I mentioned in the class sometimes from Brahmaloka, but sometimes from Vaikuntha Loka. That's avatar. From the spiritual world. There can be avatar from Brahmaloka when it descends from Brahmaloka. Anyway. Microphone.
Maharaj, from this description it appears like achieving pure devotion is more difficult than raising oneself to Brahmaloka and rising like this mystic potencies and all.
It's more difficult or more easy?
More difficult.
Oh no.
Because those sages, yogi devotees, they still have not perfected in the devotion and like that.
For the yogi devotees, it's more difficult than what we're doing. Yes. Yes.
So means it appears that even for us also, pure devotion seems to be more difficult than this achieving yoga. For
Our process is more difficult, it seems to you.
achieving pure devotion, not the process. Achieving pure devotion, is it more difficult than?
This is the most easy and most direct process, because the whole process is a manifestation of mercy. The whole process is not a manifestation of any one of our individual qualifications. We don't have to have prior eligibility, purva sanskar. We don't have to have prior eligibility. We just have to be willing to receive descending mercy and to move with it. You have to be receptive and with a service disposition to take that which we've received and be transformed and move with it. It's the easiest. It requires humility. But the other requires humility also. The tendency is, just consider, I'm a yogi. I can do this and I can do that, and I can do this and I can do that. False ego. Pride. Who needs Krishna? This is very, very transparent. We need Krishna. And that's the hard part is acknowledging that. You have to acknowledge that by another process as well. Just like Queen Kunti prays, one who has some opulence, Janma Aishvarya Shruta Shribir, Edyamanamadak Puman, such persons become mad by having some opulence. Imagine if you had not just money, but you had mystic powers. You could travel wherever you wanted just by subtle means. You don't have to have the money to get on the train, the plane, or the car. You just go. Wow, that's cool. Have opulence, pride enters. And that's the deterrent. So our process is from the get-go. What is our qualification? Being the humble servants. That's the hard part, but we're facing it right away. Without qualification. So I don't have a lot to be proud of. And the little bit that we have, we're still proud. That's the problem. Anything? Yes. Microphone over there? You have some? Okay.
How do we differentiate between false ego and contaminated consciousness?
This is a how-to question. How to what?
Distinguish between false ego and contaminated consciousness.
Well, they're good friends. False ego, specifically, is misidentification of the self with what we are not. I am goes across a bridge into what I am not. That's false ego. And contaminated consciousness is something similar, but it's specifically describing consciousness is of the soul. Consciousness, just like light and the sunshine and the sun. are like consciousness and the soul. So when consciousness is contaminated, it's not just the identification of self portion of contaminated consciousness, it's just contaminated consciousness, polluted consciousness, in a pervasive sense, having desires that are absolutely not in the interest of the soul, and I hold on to those desires. So it's all the faculties, mind, intelligence, false ego, and those are components of the material energy, but the material energy clouds or contaminates consciousness. It's another of the 24 elements. Ultimately, the soul is pure and consciousness is pure. It's like, contaminated air. There's air. And then people live on the planet for a while and put all kinds of junk in the air, and it becomes contaminated air. Within the contaminated air, there's pure air. But then there's the contaminations. So one has to remove. So you remove the contaminations, you have pure consciousness. And what is the nature of those contaminations? It's so many varieties. False ego is a specific manifestation. The sense of I am identifying with what I am not. Okay?
You mentioned two requirements for devotion: having a receptive mood and a penetrating. Can you explain on what is this penetrating?
The constitutional position of the soul is to serve. So we're giving and we're receiving. I want to enter into my relationship with Krishna. That's the penetrating aspect. I want a relationship with Krishna. But I don't have qualification. I have all this impurity. I have so many other desires too. So I'm depending upon the mercy of Krishna. That's the receptivity. As in any relationship, there's the give and the receive. Prabhupada said, it's such a nice phrase, Krishna consciousness is based on love and trust. Give and take. That is Krishna consciousness. There it is. The penetrating and the receiving. We receive, then we should serve. With the disposition of service, not the disposition of control, I'm going to do it, or kartaham iti manyate. But from the soul platform, I should serve. And who should I serve? I should serve Krishna. Who is Krishna? How do I understand? Just listening to a lecture, Prabhupada was speaking in Sweden, and it came to questions and answers, and the person said, how do you know that Krishna is God? And Prabhupada said, what is your understanding of who is God? Oh, I don't know who is God. Then why are you speaking? I can tell you who is God if you want to know. But you don't know, so you've come to hear. You didn't even get to, because he had said it in the lecture, the condition of God is, he is Bhagavan. He has all opulence and full. That is God. He who has all knowledge, all strength, all beauty, all fame, all renunciation, all opulences in full. That is God. And our scriptures indicate that is Krishna. Therefore, Vyasadeva wrote Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Therefore we accept Krishna as God. But you don't even know the criterion for understanding who God is. You want to know, is Krishna that person? So there's a discerning feature. This is the penetrating. I want to serve God. I want to serve Krishna because He's God. And one may want to serve Krishna whether He's God or not. He's all attractive. I want to serve Him. But then the receptive side, what is my qualification? So then another way of saying the same thing is devotional service depends upon our effort and mercy. Both. Correct? We don't just, it's all mercy, so I can just sit back and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just whether Krishna is going to be merciful or not. Krishna is merciful. What is your desire? If I have a desire, then it should manifest in the form of service. Let me serve Krishna. Then you go to the other side, but I don't have qualification. I don't know what it means to serve Krishna, so I have to be receptive. Receive that instruction, training, guidance, mercy. That's a relationship. Love and trust. Give and take. Receiving and serving. Or inquiring. I use the faculty of intelligence that Krishna has given to inquire about Him. And to glorify Him and to serve Him. That's relationship, a loving relationship. Love and trust. Give and take. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, we've been hearing about
Hare Krishna. So here we come to the end of this beautiful lecture. From today's lecture, what I like the most is that give and take thing, bonding with Krishna, which flows through His mercy. It's a bond. We have to serve and we get the mercy in return. So anyone who would like to share their whatever they like from today's lecture? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, from this lecture today, I understood association is very important. Without association, it's very difficult to progress in this spiritual path, Mataji. So that's what I understood. Hare Krishna.
Very true, Mataji. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Anyone else would like to comment on today's lecture, which we concluded today? Chennakeshava Prabhu, would you like to say anything? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. As Prabhupada mentioned about one of the devotees, and he was not knowing about God. So when he came to the class, he was explaining about if you want to know God, I can explain you. So all opulences, knowledge, beauty, fame. So then that's what the God Prabhupada explained. Then I have a question, Mataji. This question was asked to one of the devotee in the question and answers. How to distinguish false ego and contaminated consciousness? I want to hear again on that.
Okay, so you want to know the difference between contaminated consciousness and false ego.
Yes, Mataji.
Anyone who would like to volunteer? Kumarika Mataji, I see you in the call after a long time. Would you like to answer this question of Channa Keshava Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. What Maharaj explained was both are related. He termed them as good friends. False ego is the conception of who we are. The false ego says that I am this body, I am not the spirit soul. So we develop, because of the false ego, that is the root cause, we develop so many desires because we think we are the lords and masters, and we forget our constitutional position of that we should love and serve Krishna. We are eternal servitors. So that leads to the contaminated consciousness. So the self-conception of who we are is the that is referring to the false ego. But the consciousness as such is a part of that is the manifestation of the spirit soul. So if you see, the spirit soul is pure in consciousness in the beginning, but because of this false conception, then we develop with the so for contaminating the consciousness more than false ego, the mind, the contaminated, that is the material mind and the material everything is coming into force. So the difference is the root cause is the misidentity, and then the mind and intelligence begins to act on that misconception, and we develop the clouding of the consciousness and the contamination of the consciousness. But ultimately, he explained that if everything is getting cleared by Bhakti, then if the mind is purified, intelligence is purified, then the contamination of the consciousness is also purified. Technically speaking, if you see that the manifestation of the pure soul is a pure consciousness. That is what I have understood. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Mataji.
Yes. Channa Keshava Prabhu, does it answer your question?
Yes, Mataji. Thank you for explaining.
Thank you. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Sonali Mataji, you have raised your hand. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Mataji, I have another question. Do we want to continue discussing on the same question, or should I ask them?
Mataji, you can put your question. We will try to take it at some time. Please proceed with your question, Mataji.
So okay, thank you, ma'am. I got this question when Maharaj was here, and today also, I couldn't ask meanwhile, or I forgot. So where Maharaj always mentions sadhu sangha and association, but I just want to know what exactly sadhu sangha and association means. Like, what should be my mood when being with Maharaj or with devotees? So yeah, this is the question. I don't know whether I'm clear, but yeah, this is the question.
So your question basically is what your mood should be when you are in sadhu sangha or in good association of the devotees. That's your question, Mataji?
Yeah, and what exactly when Maharaj says what sadhu sangha? So what does that mean? Yeah.
Okay, so anyone from this group would like to attempt Shonali Mataji's question? Adisham Prabhu, would you like to answer? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Okay, just before I go to Sonali Mataji, just to give a little more visual example of what Chanakesha Prabhu said. Prabhu, like contaminated consciousness is just like saying a mirror covered with a dust, right? We don't see ourselves properly. Consider like that. Okay, the false ego is something like we consider the reflection as the original object rather than the understanding, okay, there is a reality behind it. So that is kind of a wish, maybe my understanding of some kind of visual clue about like what is contaminated consciousness and what is like false ego. The other thing is like to answer Sonali Mataji's question. What if I understood correctly? She's asking, is there any difference between like associating with Maharaj or associating with devotees? Is that what is your question, Mataji? Is it what?
Yeah, that is the part of the question, Prabhu. But the question is, what exactly Sadhu Sangha?
Okay. Sadhu Sangha means like what? Like associating with what you can say, like-minded devotees who are on the path of inquiring up to about the absolute, right? So, and the sadhus are maybe of different categories. That's what like, and whoever it is, okay, whether you are sitting with devotees who are at a more high, advanced than us, or those who are at the same level, or even when who are just trying to practice, okay, Krishna consciousness. The mode like Maharaj described is that of receiving and giving, right? From we can learn from all of these devotees many things, and at the same time we can help them as well in their spiritual practices. And it need not be like all the time a person who is speaking is at a higher advanced level than compared to a person who is receiving, okay. For example, in the case of where I'm just trying to, so in the case of like I'm just recollecting something on Maitreya Rishi and conversation between Maitreya Rishi and Vidura. Vidura is actually spiritually more advanced and devotionally more advanced than Maitreya. But at the same time, okay, both of them actually helping each other out. Okay, here when like the background is Vidura meets Uddhava and inquires about Krishna to him, about the welfare of Krishna, Balaram, and the Vrishni dynasty, right? And then Uddhava goes into an ecstatic trance of remembering the Lord, and he recounts the pastimes in Vrindavana and Dwaraka and all those things. And then he says, because like before Uddhava meets Maitreya, Uddhava meets Vidura, actually he was with Krishna, okay, and Krishna was giving some last instructions to him. Because Krishna decides to wind up his pastimes, and Uddhava got to know about it. And Maitreya was also there when Krishna spoke to Uddhava. So at that point in time, like when Uddhava, during this conversation, after recollecting all these, going to aesthetic trance and recollecting all the intimate instances of pastimes of Krishna with Vidura, he requests, and he knows like Vidura is very, very, very eager. This is one of the aspects of Sadhu Sangha, that we must be very eager to know about the Lord, to inquire about him. So Vidura's eagerness, he understood. At the same time, he says, okay, there's some distance from here. There's Maitreya Rishi ashram is there. You please go and inquire from him. So when Vidura goes and inquires from Maitreya Rishi, it is actually not as a service. Okay, when Maitreya is speaking, he becomes more inspired to actually, like, in a way one can say, okay, Vidura is taking association of Maitreya Rishi, but it's true the other way as well. Actually, Maitreya Rishi is getting a greater association of Vidura, because Vidura, his mode of receiving is so much intense that Maitreya became more and more inspired to glorify the Supreme Lord and the devotional service. So basically, we can see this interaction of take and receive and giving, okay, in both the cases. Vidura is inspiring or like rekindling Maitreya's devotion, and Maitreya is getting an opportunity to become to go more and more deeper into devotional practices, because he was not in that level of Vidura, but just getting the association of Vidura, he was inspired to go deeper in devotional service. So this is what happens when there is a sadhu sangha and association, that we try to go deeper and deeper uh, in our appreciation and as well as in our service mode. So in both the cases, there is this thing is happening. This is what I understand to be the real meaning of sadhu sangha, that we get trained, we get inspired, and we appreciate the gifts which we receive. Maybe others can add to it.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Ramkun Prabhu, you have raised your hand, and yesterday's also you said you will be telling us about what a training for a devotee means, so you can cover that as well, Prabhu.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Mataji. It's the question which Sonali Mataji raised about what is association. In the end, Harisham Prabhu did mention that it is in one sense, it's an appreciation for the sadhu, etc. That's also an essential part of what the whole thing about training is. In general, association means osmosis at some level. That is, I receive something, I give something, like that. And both are required. Receiving and giving, both are required as part of association. It is good for us to not think that we are too great. It keeps us humble, definitely, but it also keeps us in the mood of being cautious and in the mood of being a tiny fragment of the Supreme Lord. It helps us that way. And in that mood, we try to see a spiritual person or anybody else in the light of what the scriptures say and how they are manifesting what the scriptures say. So somebody walks, somebody talks, their actions, we see it in the light of the scriptures. So association is not separate or cannot be made distinct from the examples given in Shastra. Otherwise, we tend to take association based on the past impressions that we have. I might have seen my relatives, say, I'm just giving an example. I might have seen my relatives behaving in a particular way. And I might see a nice devotee also behaving in a similar way. The motivations may be different, but then we begin to say that just as my relatives were doing so and so actions for this reason, this devotee is also doing it for the same reason. In other words, sometime long ago, I had shared it. It's a quote from Bertrand Russell, which I'm just paraphrasing. The tendency of a person with a lower mind, a lower vision, a lower mindset, is to bring a person who's at a higher mindset to his or her own lower mindset level. Like for example, a sadhu may sleep. We also sleep. And then we begin to say that, hey, this person is sleeping. Maybe in the afternoon, he or she sleeps for some time. Nighttime, they sleep for some time. What big difference is there between this sadhu and any other person? So when we come in close association, we can then try to trivialize them. But even in their sleep, they are very much interested in seeing how I can just rejuvenate my body. Something like that. I'm just giving a very simple, crude example. That is, the vision to see a sadhu depends on Shastra, number one. And my association means that here is this person who has been sent by Krishna for my welfare, for me to learn something. And therefore, while I learn it, I recognize that unless and until I serve this person, I cannot receive it. Association always goes with service. Sevon muke hichikvada swayam eva sfurat adaha. That's the statement we hear from scripture. Without seva, you cannot get association. So it's important to do that seva part too. And how do we render service? We render service, of course, to the person. Second, to the person's family, if they are grahasthas. Because Srila Prabhupada said, if you love me, you are going to love my dog also. In other words, anybody who's dependent on me, you're going to serve that person. So that's bigger part of the picture. So service to the person, to their family members, that's one part of it. Because when we render service to the other person, we endear ourselves to them. It is then that there's a free flow of mercy that comes. Otherwise, why should sadhus open their heart fully to us? So the give and take is we give service, they give realizations to us. Number one. Number two is, so this service to the sadhu and to his or her family members and to his broader family members. Like say, for example, you have a guru. The service to the guru means service to his disciples too. That is his family. So that's a bigger picture as such. That's number one. As for association. And this is also part of our training that we have been in this material world for long. It is this association which can help us to change our motivations. That's the first point there. The next point is we need to have at least one or two sadhus in our life, or a guru, or anybody else, where we take major decisions in life after consulting them. And it is not for the sake of bureaucratic way that, hey, I need to do this after that. Rather, it is this thing engenders dependence. When we take major decisions after depending on them, it means Krishna is pleased. And the same mood of dependence will gradually be cultivated to the extent that one day when any of you go enter into the pastimes of Krishna Lila in any planet on earth, when there's say a demon coming or when there is the big hailstorm coming, immediately each of us will learn to, or each of you will learn to cry out, Krishna, help me. How do we come to that stage of dependence? Right now, our default mechanism is when there is problem, I am going to solve it. I'm going to use my mind, I'm going to use my intelligence and my money and resources, and I'm going to solve it. But to come to the stage of dependence on Krishna, we begin now that in our association with sadhus, we depend on them for taking major decisions in life, and with their blessings, we move on in life. That's one. The other part of it is, the third point is an extension of the first one, service to the sadhu, etc. It's also part of our training that we have to render ideally simple services. The language which is sometimes used is called menial service, menial physical service. It's very important in the life of a disciple, of a life of a devotee, that as given in the verse from the Upanishads, it's given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shrotriyam Samit Pani. Samit Pani means I keep the in my hand, Pani, or my palm rather, Samit, the ones which is gets into the yajna, the small pieces of wood which gets into the yajna. So that the association, the way in which a disciple gets or makes himself endears to the guru is do small tasks like getting firewood. Does it take a big level of intelligence to get firewood from the forest? No. You can ask anybody to do it. Somebody can do it and just break some firewood and bring it for the Homa Yajna. But it is a disciple who personally goes walks all the way to the edge of the village, to the forest, collects the firewood, and brings it for the yajna. So to that extent, the disciple should be ready to render personal service. Just a personal recollection. I did not know to this extent all these things. And I've told you, some of you, when I was in Dallas, I had, in 2004, prior to that, in 2003, I had asked Rumpad Maharaj, can I become your disciple? In 2000, it was in 2004 only I asked him, yeah. So, few months later, he had to call me and say, come wash my clothes. A disciple is supposed to do all of that. And he need not be told to do it, but that was a horrible state of affairs with me at that point in time. That's one. And along with this service here is what I recently told in a class in the temple is prasanga or association always goes with paricharya. Charati means to move, and parichara means to move around, which means you go to the left, to the right, to the in front and behind. One has to do paricharya to the Vaishnava's mission or the sadhu's mission. So associating with a person is doing whatever it takes to make the mission of that person successful, of the person to whom we are associating with. And very importantly here is that this association, the basis for this association is affection. Where affection is missing, everything else goes for a toss. And getting affection is one of the toughest portions, toughest part in our life. If you look at it here in our own morning call, it's almost 4 years or some 3-4 years that we have all been there in the morning call. And the more and more we hear each other and at the same time don't think too much of ourselves, then we get an affection for the other person who is hearing. Otherwise, we always like to just hear our own voice. I mean, in the sense, we just like to have some understanding in the mind and speak it out. But the more and more when we hear from everybody here, in a simple mood, that when we chant and we also hear, then we realize, wow, Krishna is orchestrating so many nice things in the life of this individual that they're able to speak like this. And it touches our heart. It doesn't matter whether we have been practicing for 20 years or 30 years, etc. Because anybody in touch with scriptures, with sadhus, when it comes out of their mouth, it becomes very enlivening. Having said that, I recently, when His Holiness Rumpad Maharaj came home, I didn't get any chance to speak to him, but I had some questions. So I finally wrote an email because I didn't get time to speak to him. And he also spoke something similar here. I asked him about what are the principles for training devotees. And I said, these are my thoughts. And he said, yeah, I agree with you. And then he said, I'm just quoting him now, Sadhu Sangha, or affinity for association, and close relationships with senior Vaishnavas is the main principle for bringing about realization and transformation. Holding this as a criterion for training new devotees, as well as a criterion for evaluation of them as aspiring disciples, I think it is perfectly appropriate. Otherwise, how will they grow in Krishna consciousness prior to or subsequent to initiation? That was one of his messages in that mail there. And in the mail to him, I had also said, Maharaj, that he had introduced a mentor model. And the mentor model is, there is a mentor who's like an elder brother, but he or she is supposed to be the extended arm of the spiritual master. Whatever the spiritual master has to give, the mentor has to give. And he connects to the spiritual master and tries his best. He or she tries their best to give to the newer disciples, because everybody cannot go and keep taking Maharaj's time. So it's like a little decentralized. But this mentor is supposed to be trained to know what to do when. And from a consciousness perspective, be more affectionate to the mission of the Guru and try to work for it. Not just the mission, but the character of the Guru. And so I wrote to Maharaj that, Maharaj, it seems to me that the mentor model that you had introduced, although ideal, is not being accepted, or it is being accepted superficially by the new devotee crowd. Partly because they were never part of a temple bhakta program at a young age, and most people who are coming into devotional service recently are used to a life of luxury and independence. Do you too feel the same? I asked Maharaj. And Maharaj replied, I agree with you that newer devotees do not have the same sense of mentor model, nor do they really understand how to apply it. Part of it has to do with their upbringing in Krishna consciousness, and part of it has to do with the younger generation and how they move in life. The principle doesn't change, but the application of the principle may need to be modified according to the individual in question. Allow for customized application of the principle without changing the principle. In other words, association such that, or let me put it differently. Why is association so important in the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy? It is important because from sadhana bhakti, we have to go to the Raganuga Bhakti platform. And what happens in Raganuga Bhakti? Whereas in sadhana bhakti, we try to have like a set of do's and don'ts. In Raganuga Bhakti, we are impelled by the example of another devotee and want to follow in the footsteps of another devotee. In other words, unless there is the affection and intention to be a servant of a servant of a servant, one cannot get into Raganuga Bhakti. One has to have somebody for that. And it is not that it is an abrupt transition from sadhana to Raganuga. Srila Prabhupada gave us many elements of our sadhana program where we associate with sadhus or the Guru right from the day go. Our motivation is to please them. Like in the morning program, every day we're supposed to sing the Guru Ashtakam. So each verse of the Guru Ashtakam talks about one aspect of the Guru which we can make ourselves endear ourselves to. Then there is also, we have the Tulsi Puja. In the Tulsi Puja, we say, oh, dear Tulsi Devi, you are the gateway to get into Goloka or to Vaikuntha. You please help me. I need you. So it's already embedded in our sadhaka stage itself, and we have to cultivate it. And therefore, it is very important that as part of the training process, we learn to be very open and speak properly when required as such. Sometimes we just hesitate as such, and it doesn't lead us anywhere. It's the lack of these proper relationships that makes a devotee feel a void in their life. Some people are wired for success. Some people are wired for what you call accomplishing things. But sooner or later, those who try to who accomplish, but without having proper relationships, they feel a vacuum in their heart. Therefore, our main training is, first and foremost, the principle is have that one sadhu in your life, not just your spiritual master. Because be honest, for most of you, the spiritual master wouldn't be somebody whom you are looking at daily. The person who looks at you daily and who can know what you're doing is somebody who's around you. Have that some person around you, whoever may that be, to whom you are accountable. It's very rare that people can be fully accountable in an objective way to a person who is far away from them. That's usually rare. People tend to color the perception about themselves and others based on their own consciousness. That's that contaminated consciousness which was being spoken of. That's one aspect of the training. And the purpose of the training is that one's attraction and appreciation for the scriptures, etc., increases day by day. Nobody can ever say that it has reached a peak at any point in time. It's always a process of growth. And an indicator for the training to be manifesting in the life of an individual is, they become more and more humble. And they more and more, they don't waste time in unnecessary things, and they do something or the other for Guru, Krishna, and the sadhus. That's some thoughts. It's already 7:25. I think I should stop here. It's all right.
Thank you so much for the wonderful explanation, Prabhu. Thanks a lot.
Really, Prabhu, it really helps us so much when we listen all this from you. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
So I will end the session today, and Shamkun Prabhu, you will have to share the next lecture because we completed this lecture today. So
We'll do
tomorrow-
that, Mataji. Yeah, I'll do that.
Prabhu,
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Hare Krishna.